Welcome to Love at All Costs with your host, James Francesco. And today I'm going to discuss the Bible study, some of the questions that were asked last week that I went to. And yeah, a lot of people had different answers to the questions that were raised. And if you were listening um, to the answers, you sort of realize that people are actually answering these questions differently than how it was actually asked. It's very important to listen to the questions that are being asked in the way that they are asked and to not make any assumptions. So, for instance, this question was, do we have to work at being righteous? People were answering that totally differently. One person was answering it as, in order to become right with God, do we need to do good works? To which she answered, no, we are saved by grace through faith alone because of what Christ has done for us on the cross, which is right. It's just not answering the question as it was asked. Another person was answering it as it was as if, oh, well, if we're saved, then, we don't just sit back and do nothing. We actually have to work at, we have to actually work at our faith, and we don't just do nothing about it. To which that person answered completely differently from the other person, basically the opposite. And so it's important to answer the questions as they're asked, first of all, and to listen to what other people are saying, because oftentimes in Bible studies, what you have is one person answers the question, and then the other person wants to add something else to it. And the other person wants to add another thing. And first of all, they're changing topics as they're going along. Or if they do add something, then they ramble off to something else. Or lots of different things happen, and what you end up with is 15 to 20 minutes answering one question. And the leader usually is not able to recognize that, hey, this question was answered 15 minutes ago. Let's move on to the next question. But so the answer, I would say, is depends on what the question, how the leader, what he meant in the first place. But Philippians 2:13 or 12-13 says, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God at work at you." So a lot of people were saying, of course, it's if we surrender, we have to surrender. We have to daily subscribe to God's plan. We have to, it's all about our choice and obeying Christ. And of course, Christ has commanded many things of us, and it is up to us to obey what he says. That's what it means for him to be Lord of our lives. But a lot of people will miss out on the second part, for it is God that works in you. We were saved by grace through faith. It is completely his doing. We were dead in our trespasses and sins, Ephesians 2 says. So there's no merit, there's nothing that we can boast before God about, not even our salvation, not even our so-called choice of salvation. But so why does it all of a sudden change for people once we are saved? It's our choice, we have to obey Christ. But it is God who works in us so that we don't get any glory even after our salvation. When we obey a command of Christ, it is not because we were smart enough and obedient enough and holy enough in and of ourselves, but is because what God is doing in our lives. I think this is a very important distinction, precisely because of who we're giving glory to. If all we need is a 5-step program, then sure, that's very convenient to our flesh, because then once we obey those 5 things, then we can say, hey, look what I did. And all of a sudden, what's the point of Christianity anyway? I might as well just go create my own religion. So those are some thoughts in terms of that question. And the other question was asked, why are we jealous of other people's gifts? I don't know why this question was raised. I don't really see. But either way, yes, it's assumed that we should not be jealous or envious of other people's gifts or talents. And one person emphasized that, which I really appreciated. He emphasized it is that our sin, it's because of our sinful nature that we do this. But I as much as I like that, and because it actually attempted to answer the question, it wasn't just people rambling off about stories of how they used to envy and now they're so different. But I do think that you could say a lot more to it, because in terms of the gospel, when we are envious of other people's talents and gifts, what's happening in and of ourselves? Well, we think that we deserve certain talents and certain gifts. Why do we want that in the first place? Is it not because we want to be looked upon as higher than we actually think we are? Is it not because that in and of ourselves we think that we deserve something more than what we've gotten? It's us saying to God, hey, God, you are failing at your job. So we have to recognize that the gospel says we are completely sinful, we are completely dead in our sin without Christ, and now that we are saved, we're God's children, but that doesn't make us, higher than anybody else. It means that God has lavished His love on us. We need to be gracious to others, and we should be glad when other people are more gifted than us, because that means that we can no longer we don't have as many things to stand before God with. So we need to comprehend the gospel and the love that Christ has lavished on us, and we need to recognize that we're not so great as we are. It says in Luke 9:48, the question was asked, who is the greatest by the disciples? And Jesus answers, whoever receives this child in my name receives me. Whoever receives me receives him who sent me. So while the answer is humility, it's not just humility as like the answer in and of itself. It's humility towards Christ, recognizing that He is so holy and I'm not, but yet He gave up His life for me so that I may live. The fact that I have breath in my lungs is a gift that I do not deserve. So I'll just leave it at that. Some other things that were brought up. You know what? I'll just leave it at that. Now that it's almost 10 minutes, and you're probably getting really bored because I'm not that exciting, because I'm quite distracted with this camera and how it's forcing me to look at myself. And I'm not the greatest person to look at, especially when I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say. So I'll have to figure out a way to fix that, and I'll do another one after. Bye.